160 years worth of memories are in this one place. The word began to spread that there was a need for a change in the community's emotional health. In the 1850s, there was an awakening in the heart of New York City.
The building the park comes at the time when Manhattan is really growing. The city is growing, and Manhattan is growing in population. And the borders of the park are 8th Avenue and 5th Avenue. 5th Avenue especially is going to be a street that is going to become lined with the homes of the wealthy. And New Yorkers, certainly the elite New Yorkers, are becoming wealthier. It's already starting in the years before the Civil War, but it'll really take off after. And so in many ways, the park reflects the values of the people who are starting to build there and who will live there in its early years, during the late 1800s. So at first the park was designed really as a place for the wealthy. It wasn't a place for picnicking. There weren't playgrounds. It was remote from the working class New Yorkers who lived in the lower part of Manhattan, and it was not as easy to commute. So in many ways, it was something that reinforced, I think, the Fifth Avenue to be this sort of gold mile of the wealthy. Plans were submitted, and the plan that was chosen was a plan by the two people who were to this day credited really with the design of the park, Frederick Law Olmsted and Calvert Vaux. The reason it's called Central Park is it was pretty much in the geographical center of Manhattan.
The beautiful streets of New York were just about to get better. The first urban landscape park in the United States.
At the time, the Croydon Reservoir was right in the center, and there still is a reservoir, right in the center of the park. So the park begins construction right around the time of the Civil War, right before the Civil War, and continues well into the 1870s. It was a very remote area in Manhattan, hard to believe, in Midtown, but it was kind of far north, and it has the geology of it is one that made it inhospitable for a lot of business and even residential use. Very swampy, very rocky, and there were people live there though, over 1,000 people, including a large African American community in Seneca Village, who will be displaced when the park is built. There's a convent on part of the site as well, but it was mostly poorer people compared to what will surround it in years to come. It's quite a contrast.
The hands of many Irish, German, and New England built this park. Every tour goes to when they arrive to New York City. These men got paid anywhere from $1 to $1.50 a day, where they worked up to hours just to make this park what it is today, breaking down big rocks, clearing up paths, and cutting nature down. Although there was this beautiful park for the public, there was no one to maintain it. This caused the first decline of Central Park.
One can imagine, right? The Great Depression years, and of course the 60s and 70s was devastating, financial crisis in New York, right? There just wasn't the budget to fix the park. However, many people love the park, and lots of private donors, right, came to the aid of the park, as well as I think the city also recognizing how important the park was. And you really start to see the Conservancy in the late 70s and early 80s do lots of important repair work to the park.
In the early 20th century, Central Park was threatened with social, political, and economic problems. Robert Moses, who was the park's commissioner, was able to restore the park through funds which helped the park regain its life. After Robert Moses left the office, for 2 decades there was no one to be the park's commissioner. And the park had its second fall. This time it was worse, because there had been no one to protect it. What was once a beautiful bench to sit on, or a beautiful lamp standing down the walk path to light up the walk, was all broken and torn down. Graffiti all over everything. Garbage was its grass. Central Park had become a deserted park. Citizens of New York, George Soros and Richard Gilder, petitioned for chief executive officer with full authority for management of the park, and a board of guardians for the maintenance of the park.
But I think in the 20th century, you really start to see the park take on the characteristic it has much more today, as a park where all sorts of people spend time. Especially after the subway is built in 1904, it becomes cheaper and easier for people from any part of the city. The city itself moves uptown, so in a way, the people move toward the park. And once, right, as New York and I think all of American society changes, working people start to have weekends to themselves when this 6-day work week kind of goes. And it becomes a place where you do see much more variety of people. And it is an amazing place, I would say, even today. It's one of those places where rich and poor, all sorts of people in New York, which is, of course, a place full of all sorts of diversity. It's a place where they will rub shoulders and share. So it is a kind of shared commons, I think, much more than in its early